And where is it right now? Because you're going to go, when is it going to be released?
It opens, it premieres Tuesday in New York.
And you're working on it last.
A single line in Hollywood can take an ordinary act and make it unforgettable.
You're gonna hurt me, are you?
I'm not gonna hurt you at all. There's no hurting here, Danielle.
Martin Scorsese, a director whose never-ending search for cinematic beauty has shaped American movies for more than 50 years, knows this better than most. From the gritty streets of Taxi Driver to the wild extravagance of The Wolf of Wall Street, Scorsese tells stories that show our deepest fears and wants if we really look closely. There were parts of truth in a lot of the stories I used in my movies. In spite of his creative genius, he has a temper as fiery as the characters he creates. Famous stars like Robert De Niro and Leonardo DiCaprio have worked with Scorsese, partnerships that have become part of movie history. Still, not every artist is happy in the world of his art. Some have run into trouble with his strict standards, even though they have been praised elsewhere. People who are victims of a director who wants them to completely change for the camera. These fights show more than just differences in taste in art. In them, a deeper conflict between creative philosophy and personal belief is shown. He once said, "Cinema is a matter of what's in the frame and what's out." For 6 players, there was always something that wasn't in the picture. Martin Scorsese's okay with it. They never got that rare stamp of approval that could make or break a career. And when it wasn't there, tensions ran through Hollywood, sometimes changing the course of people's lives forever. One of them was James Caan. It looked like his fiery energy and rough manhood were made for Scorsese's world, which was full of danger, pride, and chaos. In the mid-1970s, Caan was in talks to play in Scorsese's unrealized project Italian American, a character-driven movie set in New York's Little Italy. This was right after his big break as Sonani Corleo in The Godfather. There was something dangerous about Jimmy, Scorsese later said in an interview about the movie. He had this authenticity I wanted, but his ideas about the character clashed completely with mine. The fight reached a peak during a famous practice, where Caan is said to have started rewriting lines on the spot. Crew members say what happened next was nothing less than fiery. Scorsese exploding with anger over what he saw as going against his artistic vision. Caan told The New Yorker many years later that he wanted to improvise, but only the kind of improvisation he does. And then there's what the hell that was: creative freedom. Within a few weeks the project fell apart. Scorsese officially said that they had creative issues. In secret he told his friends that Caan was awful to work with. Following their careers, both guys became well known. But their paths, which used to be so open to working together, never crossed again. Their short but fiery work together is still one of the great what-ifs in movie history. The name Mark Wahlberg was added to Scorsese's long list of people who have caused him trouble in the past. The way they fought while making The Departed was one of the most interesting artistic disconnects in modern Hollywood. With his Boston edge, Wahlberg brought to the role of sharp-tongued explosive Staff Sergeant Dignam. It's honest, quick-talking, and full of energy. Scorsese thought he saw exactly what he needed at first. He told the Directors Guild that Mark was active and had a good reputation on the street, which made him a good fit for Dignam. But he kept asking me to show him who the real person was. That pushback got worse very quickly. There was a lot of stress on set, especially during Dignam's sweary office scenes. Crew members said that Scorsese kept cutting takes and telling Wahlberg to calm down so that he could see the control underneath the anger. An helper on the set later told Vanity Fair that he kept saying less when everything about this guy screamed more. When The Departed came out, the irony came full circle. Many problems happened behind the scenes, but Wahlberg's fiery performance won the movie's only acting Oscar nomination, which even surprised Scorsese, according to people who worked on the project. There was a lot of tension between Scorsese and Wahlberg, even though they kept a professional front in public. When early hiring talks for Shutter Island and The Wolf of Wall Street began, Wahlberg's name was quietly taken off the list. After many years, Scorsese told a group of film students at NYU, "Sometimes an actor gives you exactly what the audience wants but not what the character needs." Julia Roberts also had a similar clash of worlds. A short meeting between her and Scorsese during pre-production for The Age of Innocence showed that there was a huge gap between Hollywood's American sweetheart and the country's most demanding director. At first, Roberts was considered for the part of Countess Ellen Olenska, which Michelle Pfeiffer later made famous. She then began Scorsese's careful process of immersing herself in the history of the movie. Scorsese admitted in a film magazine years later that she had a bright quality that could have worked really well. I tried to train her out of her modernity, but she wouldn't change. That disagreement reached a peak during a character fitting. Roberts was allegedly annoyed by how tight the period corsets were and asked why she had to be limited in this way. Because Scorsese was always committed to realism, she argued that the discomfort was important and that she had to feel the limits of 19th century society in order to really embody the character. He told me I couldn't breathe right in order to understand the part. Later, Roberts hinted at this during a round-table discussion with The Hollywood Reporter, being careful not to name Scorsese. I guess you could call it method directing. Roberts quit the project after a particularly tense conversation about the character's cultural background. This left Scorsese to move forward without her, and Hollywood to wonder what might have been. Insiders quickly told this story as a cautionary tale about how Scorsese's unwavering dedication to historical accuracy clashed with a star's style that was based on gut. Later, Scorsese told the New York Times, "I need actors who can disappear into another time, not ones who make that time feel like our own." That was a hard lesson for Ryan O'Neal to learn. Even though O'Neal is known for his easy charm and leading man appeal, his failed audition for Raging Bull is still one of the most talked about casting disasters in history. It happened in 1978, before Robert De Niro officially got the part of Jake LaMotte, and O'Neal was still off the high from Barry Lyndon and Paper Moon. Later, Scorsese told his longtime editor Thelma Schoonmaker, "It was probably the most uncomfortable hour I've ever spent in casting." Maker would later talk about the experience in a Film Heritage review. When he looked at the material, it seemed strange and not quite familiar to him. When the tension hit its peak, O'Neal is said to have suggested reducing the violence in the home, hoping that LaMotta would feel more sympathetic toward Scorsese. That was a terrible misreading of what the movie was about. "If you're worried about being liked," he reportedly told her, "you're in the wrong room." The meeting finished quickly. O'Neal never talked about the conversation in public, but he did mention it briefly in his later autobiography. "Some directors want ugly things to be real. I've always thought that people need a way in and a reason to care." In the end, De Niro would be everything that Scorsese wanted him to be. The brutal, raw truth of a man who was filled with anger and jealousy, while O'Neal's run-in with a raging bull was lost in Hollywood's long list of almost happens and what could have been. This meeting would come to represent the difference between Hollywood's usual leading guys and Scorsese's darker, more honest looks at people. Soon after, Scorsese told American Film, "There's a difference between movie stars and what I need. They have to be willing to be looked down upon." Winona Ryder would have to deal with that demand directly. During the making of Age of Innocence 1993, she had a quiet but heated argument with Scorsese. It is still remembered as one of his most private but telling creative fights. Ryder felt torn between how she wanted to play Mae Welland, the bride who seems delicate but is actually very smart on the inside. Scorsese's version of the part was more complex, showing repressed desire and moral clarity. Winona had this glowing presence that was just right for the movie. Scorsese later said in a retrospective of film comments, "But she didn't agree with my view on Mae's inner understanding. She knew very well what she was doing to Newland and the Countess." That philosophical tug-of-war reached a peak while the scene with the proposal was being filmed at van der Luden's house. Reports say that production stopped for almost 6 hours while Scorsese pushed Ryder to find the right mix. With a hint of quiet trickery, innocence, Marty would lean in close and whisper to her for 20 to 30 minutes between takes, said Dante Ferretti, the production designer. But when she came back with red eyes and was ready to try again, he would whisper even more while the camera was rolling. Crew members noticed that the relationship between the director and star was getting tense, especially when Mae announced her pregnancy, which was the emotional high point of the movie. This conversation, which most people didn't see, showed how much Scorsese's relentless search for emotional truth, even from those who shone best in front of his lens, cost him. "Artists were just trying to get their movies made at first," said script supervisor Martha Pinson in a rare talk with Sight and Sound. Marty was looking for a very specific thing with the Age of Innocence. In Victorian culture there was a lot of strict behavior, and people were very violent with their feelings. Winona, on the other hand, was looking for Mae's softness and weakness. Mardian thought that made her less powerful. That difference in attitude made the production what it was. Ryder gave a great performance that got her nominated for an Oscar, but there was still creative tension between her and the director behind the scenes. She was noticeably missing from the film's audio track and a lot of the promotional events, which was a small but telling sign that they were no longer working together. Years later, when asked if he would work with Ryder again, Scorsese gave a short, almost abrupt answer. Winona is great at some things, but Mae Wellen needed something completely different. The fallout was quiet and lasted for a long time. Even though the writer continued to have success in Hollywood, she was never again considered for a Scorsese project. The director told Sandy Powell, a longtime collaborator, "Sometimes getting to a great performance is so hard and tiring that you can't imagine going through it again, even if the result looks great on screen." Their work together on The Age of Innocence is a tribute to both of them. A beautiful performance born from a battle of vision and will where art won, but the partnership did not survive. Jim Card's almost work with Martin Scorsese is one of the most interesting creative close calls in Hollywood history. It was a clash of improvised genius and accurate direction that never got past the planning stage. After The Truman Show and Man on the Moon were both big hits in 1999, Carey was briefly linked to Scorsese's long-in-the-works Howard Hughes biopic, which would later become The Aviator. At the time, Scorsese wanted to paint a darker, more psychological picture of Hughes's spiral into madness and obsession. Scorsese told Premiere magazine, "Jim had this crazy energy that could have perfectly captured Hughes's strange genius. But that energy needed to be shaped, guided with precision." At Scorsese's office in New York there was a tough character class that was the turning point. Later, production designer Dante Ferretti, who went to the meeting to talk about Hughes's changing surroundings, remembered the moment very clearly. Jim came in with this amazing set of ideas, complete body changes, voice changes, and physical tics, all made up on the spot. Ferretti told Film Architecture Quarterly. Martin became more and more quiet as he watched. It felt like the room was getting cooler every minute. It wasn't about skill but about how they did things. The natural, free-flowing way that Carr worked went against Scorsese's need for complete control and accuracy. When they talked about the writing, things went too far. Scorsese insisted on sticking to speech to the letter, Carey pushing for finding to happen on its own. It turned out to be impossible to bridge that intellectual gap. Within weeks they stopped working together, and the project went on. Years later, Leonardo DiCaprio took the lead on a new version of the project. It's still one of the biggest mysteries in film for many people who saw that short spark of creativity. They wonder what Scorsese's uncompromising realism would have been like when Carr's raw unpredictability was mixed with it. There are two kinds of brilliance in acting. Scorsese is said to have told his longtime partner in production, Barbara DeFina, after the failed project, "Jim's is undeniable, but it doesn't fit within my process.